March 1945. Deep under London, Churchill is staring at a wall-sized map of Germany, waiting for Montgomery's perfect Rhine crossing to begin. Then a telegram lands on the table. Patton crossed already, overnight, quiet, and ahead of schedule. Within hours, Montgomery will demand discipline, Churchill will refuse, and Eisenhower will be forced to contain a coalition crisis he cannot afford. The crossing itself is only half the story. The other half is the moment Churchill realizes a brutal truth. In modern war, too aggressive costs, but too slow costs more. Now rewind. The cabinet war rooms don't feel like offices. They feel like the inside of a steel ship that can't surface. Concrete walls, low ceilings, stale air, buzzing lamps that make everyone look older. It's late, but time behaves differently down here. Days blur, nights stretch. The war never sleeps, so neither does the man running the country through it. Churchill stands under hard light, staring at a map covered in pins and strings. Each pin marks a division. Each string is a line of supply or a line of danger. He's not just watching fronts move. He's watching the future being negotiated 1 mile at a time. His attention keeps drifting back to the same feature. The Rhine, not a city, not a fortress, a river. A final natural obstacle before Allied armies can spill into the industrial core of Germany. Cross it in strength and you don't just win ground, you collapse a whole defensive logic. Fail, stall, or bleed too long and you give Germany something precious, time. Churchill wants this war finished. He wants it finished before the end game turns ugly in ways the public can't yet see. He wants it finished while the alliance is still intact. And he is tired of delays that look reasonable on paper but cost lives in reality. For weeks, his focus has been fixed on one operation. Operation Plunder, Montgomery's Rhine crossing. The planned one. The rehearsed one. The one built like a machine. On the surface, it's everything Churchill should love. Professionalism, discipline, coordination, and a scale so large it feels unstoppable. But Churchill has another feeling under that admiration. Impatience, because the buildup has been massive and massive buildups don't hide. German reconnaissance can see the signs. Everyone can. Artillery being positioned, stockpiles rising, roads clogging with units and engineers. The weight of preparation itself becomes a message to the enemy. Montgomery doesn't mind that. Montgomery's philosophy is simple in its own way. If you apply overwhelming force at the right place, surprise becomes optional. You can let the enemy watch you load the punch, because once it lands, it still breaks the jaw. Churchill isn't fully convinced anymore, not because plunder is unsound, but because the war is changing faster than old habits can keep up. And then the telegram arrives. An aide moves quickly through the room with a sealed envelope. Churchill takes it, breaks it open without ceremony, and reads. His eyes run across the words once. Then again, slower, his face changes, not outrage, not joy, something colder. The message is short. Patton crossed the Rhine, already, not next week, not on the grand timetable, not with the set-piece spectacle. Done, overnight, quiet. It's the kind of news that should feel like progress. Another barrier crossed, another step toward Berlin, another shortening of the war. But Churchill isn't reacting like a man receiving good news. He's reacting like a man seeing a fault line open under a coalition, because Patton didn't just cross a river. He crossed a boundary of protocol, and that boundary holds the alliance together. To understand why this telegram hits like a detonator, you have to understand the two men behind it. Bernard Law Montgomery is the British establishment in uniform, controlled and methodical, with a deep belief that war is best fought as a problem you solve through preparation. His ideal battle is a set piece. Choose the ground, build the plan, reduce uncertainty, stockpile supplies, rehearse movements, and strike when conditions favor you so strongly the outcome becomes inevitable. He won in North Africa through patience and mass. He believes in conserving lives by refusing unnecessary risk. His troops call him Monty with affection. His critics call him slow with frustration. But even his critics admit something when Montgomery commits. He commits with weight. George Patton is the other extreme. He believes time is the most valuable weapon on the battlefield, and he spends it aggressively. He lives for tempo, shock, and psychological collapse. He doesn't want the enemy to prepare. He wants the enemy to panic. His best operations aren't built to be flawless. They're built to be fast. Patton's belief can be said in one sentence. A good plan executed now beats a perfect plan executed later. It is not just style. It is doctrine. It is worldview. Montgomery wants control. Patton wants momentum. Montgomery wants certainty. Patton wants to create uncertainty for the enemy. Both believe they're saving lives. They just disagree on how. By March 1945, that disagreement is no longer academic. It's about the Rhine. Hitler has treated the Rhine as a symbol as much as a barrier. Bridges destroyed, banks fortified, kill zones planned. It's supposed to be the last clean, defensive line before the Allies pour into Germany's interior. Both Patton and Montgomery know that crossing the Rhine will define reputations. The first crossing becomes a headline, the second becomes an explanation. Montgomery's plunder is designed to be the headline. It's large enough to feel historical before it even begins. The preparation has been long, the coordination is huge, the operational design is precise. Engineers are ready to throw bridges across. Artillery is stacked to pulverize the far bank. Air power is aligned. Airborne elements are planned to deepen the bridgehead. It is the Rhine crossing as a demonstration of professionalism. It is also a Rhine crossing everyone can see coming. From the German side, the buildup is obvious. When you see mountains of ammunition and lines of vehicles and artillery parks that stretch for miles, you don't need perfect intelligence to guess the direction of the blow. German commanders reinforce likely crossing areas. They shift units. They prepare for exactly the kind of crossing Montgomery likes. Montgomery isn't bothered, because his view is this: if your firepower is absolute, prepared defenses become targets, not obstacles. But Patton sees the same map and draws a different conclusion. If German attention is being pulled north toward the obvious, then somewhere else the defense is thin. Somewhere else the river is watched, but not guarded by the best remaining units. Somewhere else the enemy believes no sane commander will try a crossing without massive supporting fires. Patton looks for that somewhere else, finds it around Oppenheim, a town that on a staff map looks like just another name on a riverbank. But in Patton's mind, it's a gap in German expectation. It's a crossing point that matters precisely because it isn't the one everyone is talking about. The Germans have shifted their weight to defend against plunder. Patton intends to use that weight against them, because the real secret isn't firepower, it's timing. While Montgomery's planners are still polishing procedures, Patton makes his move, not with a giant curtain raiser, with silence. No long preliminary bombardment that warns defenders to take cover and wake their reserves. No dramatic airstrikes that announce the hour. No obvious rehearsal that screams, "This is the place." Just boats and darkness, a cold river and men who paddle without talking, a crossing that relies on the oldest trick in war, surprise. This is the part that terrifies staff officers, because if it fails in a way you can't hide. If you cross without the heavy preparation and you get caught in the open, you lose men fast. And you don't just lose men, you lose credibility. That's why in a coalition, too aggressive costs isn't a slogan, it's a warning. An aggressive move can buy time, but it can also burn trust. It can create a political firestorm that makes coordination harder in the next operation. Patton accepts that risk, because he believes the war is won by those who act before the enemy is ready. On the night of March 22nd, while Montgomery's operation is still being assembled in plain view and senior commanders are still talking about final checks, Patton moves units toward the river. American infantry boards assault boats. The water is fast and bitter. The far bank is not empty. There are guns, positions, and sentries, but the defenses are lighter than they would be where Montgomery is building his giant assault. The Germans here do not expect a major crossing this way. Not tonight. The first boats scrape the far side. The first soldiers move off the riverbank. The first fights happen close and violent. The Americans push through positions before defenders can coordinate. German reaction is late because German expectation was wrong. Within hours, the bridgehead is secured enough for engineers to begin their work. And engineers move with purpose when the plan is simple: get a bridge up, get armor across, expand before the enemy can regroup. By dawn, Patton isn't just a cross. He's building the kind of momentum that makes the Rhine stop being a barrier at all. Now come back to Churchill in the war rooms. He reads the telegram again and turns toward the map like he's staring at a chessboard where someone has just made a move you didn't think was allowed. On the same wall, Montgomery's preparations still look enormous. Artillery parks, ammunition dumps, carefully staged formations, all of it pointing toward a crossing that is still a day away. And Patton has already done it. Churchill doesn't laugh with joy. He gives a short, sharp sound that is closer to disbelief than humor. He understands instantly what this means for prestige, for politics, for Montgomery's pride, and for the alliance's fragile balance. Because the British story of plunder is built on a belief. Crossing the Rhine requires months of preparation and overwhelming force. Patton has just proved that under certain conditions, speed and surprise can do the job with fewer losses than anyone predicted. And that is humiliating if you are the commander who has spent months explaining why you must wait. Churchill also understands the next step. Montgomery will demand consequences. Not out of pure jealousy, though jealousy will be present, but because coalition command has rules. If a major subordinate commander can launch a headline operation without coordination and get away with it, the entire structure begins to wobble. The next Patton might not be as lucky, and then you're cleaning up not only dead men but a fractured alliance. Montgomery's argument will be principled on the surface. Discipline matters, coordination matters, unified command matters. It's a real argument. And Churchill's counter-argument is even more real. Try to punish Patton for success and you look petty, jealous, and weak, especially when America is providing the bulk of the divisions and the momentum. Try to satisfy Montgomery's pride at America's expense, and you risk damaging the alliance at the finish line. Churchill sees the political shape of it instantly. He knows that if he walks into Eisenhower's office and demands Patton be relieved, the Americans will ask why. And the honest answer will sound terrible. We are firing your most successful field commander not because he failed, but because he moved faster than our plan. Churchill understands what that would do to trust. He understands what it would do to morale. He understands what it would do to the image of Britain inside the coalition. He has spent years selling the idea of equal partnership. He knows at this stage of the war that equality is an illusion maintained through careful phrasing. Patton's crossing threatens that illusion, so Churchill begins doing what he does best, managing reality without letting pride break everything. He drafts messages. He calibrates tone. He prepares for the confrontation that will follow. Because the war is not only fought in forests and on rivers. It's fought in rooms like this where one sentence can decide whether allies remain allies. When Montgomery launches plunder the next day, the operation is enormous, coordinated, and by professional standards, impressive. Artillery fires in planned sequences. Air power hits targets. Troops cross in waves. Engineers do the work that keeps the flow going. Airborne forces drop to deepen the bridgehead and lock down routes. Militarily, plunder delivers, but politically it lands late. Not late in the schedule, late in the story, because the public narrative has shifted to speed. The headlines will not lead with coordination. They will lead with first. And Montgomery knows it. His staff knows it. Everyone who reads American papers knows it. Even some British officers know it quietly, privately, with the kind of grim acceptance men have when the world changes and you can't stop it. Pause 1 second. This is the moment where the alliance is still winning, but the hierarchy inside it is tilting. Patton doesn't care much about that tilt. He sees the Rhine as another obstacle removed, another proof that daring works. Another reason the war ends sooner. He enjoys the spotlight and doesn't apologize for taking it. Montgomery doesn't enjoy any of this. To him, Patton has endangered unity and turned war into a personal race. He will argue that planning saves lives and improvisation kills. He will point to the value of plunder's careful execution and the lower losses that often come from crushing force. He won't be wrong, but Churchill will still choose not to break the alliance over it, because Churchill understands something that is ugly to admit. In 1945, Britain cannot force America to slow down. Britain can advise. Britain can execute brilliantly. Britain can still be essential, but Britain cannot dictate tempo. That is what Churchill sees when he reads Patton's telegram. He doesn't just see a river crossing. He sees the future of coalition power. The side with the most divisions and the most momentum becomes the senior partner, whether anyone says it out loud or not. And Churchill, the master of language, understands when language can no longer hide truth. He also understands the more human part of it, what this does to Montgomery. A commander who built his identity on professionalism and control has just been upstaged by a commander who thrives on speed and chaos. No matter how well plunder performs, it will always be framed against Patton's sudden success. That is the cruel mathematics of history. Montgomery may secure the bridgehead in textbook fashion, but Patton will be remembered as the one who moved first. And that is why Churchill's reaction is so complicated. He can admire results and still mourn what those results do to prestige and morale. Because he knows prestige matters too in a different way. It holds nations together. It keeps officers loyal. It keeps people believing the sacrifice is meaningful. But Churchill has learned the hard way that sometimes you must spend prestige to buy victory. That is what he is doing now, spending British pride to keep American momentum, because he believes momentum ends the war, and ending the war brings men home, so the Rhine crossing becomes a mirror. Montgomery's crossing reflects a world where control and planning define excellence. Patton's crossing reflects a world where speed and surprise define victory. Churchill stands between them, forced to make the choice leaders hate most. Not between right and wrong, but between two forms of right that cannot coexist without conflict. In the end, both men cross the Rhine. Germany collapses, the war ends, and the crisis becomes a story people tell as rivalry, ego, and drama. But underneath the drama is the real lesson Churchill understood the moment he opened that telegram. Too aggressive costs, but too slow can cost the entire tempo of victory. And in March 1945, tempo mattered more than pride. Which part of this story stayed with you?